Hey there, welcome to Theology Thursday, where we unpack a biblical principle to see how it applies to our lives. You guys, I love this series we're on. We are continuing our series, How Do You Relate to God? We've examined the impact that unbelief and false beliefs have on our ability to have a right relationship with God. Now, removing the baggage and obstacles of unbelief and false beliefs helps us to know God better, as our false perceptions no longer distort who He really is. This week, we will examine the mechanics of how we relate to God. So imagine if you're married, if you never spoke with your spouse, what kind of relationship would this be like? My husband is known to be a quiet guy, and I probably drive him nuts sometimes by asking, "What are you thinking? What are you thinking?" But as he has gotten to know me, he knows that talking with me is important. So it is in our relationship with God. Do you talk with Him? What is your prayer life like? I think, as I thought about it today, there are four chief obstacles that can keep us from coming to God. One, we don't feel good enough to come to Him. Two, we don't know what to say. Three, we struggle to make the time to pray. We have a lot of demands on us. And four, we struggle to relate to a God we cannot see. Let's unpack these different obstacles and let's overcome them together, shall we? Prayer is the main avenue we have to talk with God. And essentially, we relate to Him as we share our concerns with Him. However, prayer shouldn't just be about coming and complaining to God. He wants to know our concerns, but prayer is a relationship where we express our love, devotion, and gratitude and seek His will and His presence. Much like we enjoy fellowship with other people when we hang out with friends, prayer should not be conceived of as just a religious duty. It is time to just hang out with God, acknowledge His presence, and talk with Him to get His perspective, and cry out to Him. Sometimes my best prayer times are when no one else is around. You feel like you might be judged for talking out loud when you're the only one in the room, right? So, number one, we don't feel good enough to come to Him. Back to the marriage analogy. Really, any relationship that we're in, it could be a parent relationship, a sister, a brother, a friend, but any relationship that we are in our relationships with others, we want to be close to them and we want to know what matters to them. We also hope to encourage people that we care about and be encouraged by them. We all bring something to the table in our relationships, and we feel accepted by these people that we love, and they get us. Of course, there are also relationships that we have with some people who maybe they consider themselves better than us, or they're in another league. And if there were such a thing, we can feel so small. But that is not how it is with God, who is in a completely another league from us. While relating to the one true perfect God is humbling because we fall so short of His glory, the fact that God invites us to come to Him should remove the obstacle of not feeling good enough to approach the King of Heaven. Hebrews 4:16 says, "Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need." We can confidently come to God because of His grace, not because of how we performed or measured up. His love is unconditional. So now that you know you can come to God, maybe your struggle is more like you don't know what to say or what it should look like. So if you ever found yourself in a place where you don't know what to say, just take away the pretense and come as you are. You might feel foolish. You might weep. But when you don't know what to say that. I've come to God many times when I have felt overwhelmed and there were just no words. Just being still in His presence and reading His word helps me to communicate with God when words just won't do. Romans 8 verse 26 says, "Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weakness, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words." Getting to the root of why prayer is hard for us can help us to move past our silence. Are you offended by God because it does not feel like He is answering you? Tell Him that. That is relating to God. There are ways to tell Him that. It's okay to ask questions and then ask God for the faith to believe and to trust Him. Maybe another reason that you don't know what to say is because you are anxious and just don't have the faith to pray. The Bible has a prescription for our prayerless moments. Philippians 4 verse 6 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your request be made known to God." Talk to Him about it. Start thinking of things that you have to be thankful for. That'll get the ball rolling. Don't let it be rote prayers. Dig deep and let yourself feel what you are feeling and express it to God. He already knows what you're going to pray anyway, but that does not mean we don't express it to Him as well. He is inviting us into a relationship. Sometimes in our relationships with others, there can be a wedge in the relationship or hurt feelings. Acknowledge any feelings that you have. God knows them anyway, and ask God to help you with those feelings. Well, the number 3 obstacle to prayer is probably applicable to us all, I think. We struggle to make the time to pray. This is where discipline comes handy. Discipline does not mean punishment, but where we know that our relationship with God is important, so we prioritize it. Yes, there are lots of demands on us, but as it has been said, we are too busy not to pray. We struggle to make the time to pray because we are about our business, not God's. We need to be about God's business in our busyness. Ask yourself what you can prune to make time for God. Sometimes life's responsibilities keep us from God. We struggle to make time to pray because we need to see our need to spend time with God. We need Him to give us His perspective because so many influences are in our culture that keep us away from Him. We need Him to reveal His word to us. We need His presence in us. We struggle to make time to pray because we don't know how to and what it is supposed to look like. Your relationship with God is unique. Relate to Him in your own way. There's no one right way. Matthew 6 verse 6 says, "But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you." Everyone's schedule is going to look different. But consider how you make time for people you love. Do you love God? Really love Him? Put Him first and don't make excuses. This can happen in our relationships with others as well, where we get too busy. I know in the midst of writing this dissertation that my husband has had to be very patient with me. But I've also been very intentional to rise early in the morning, like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning, to get a few hours of seeking God and writing my dissertation in before he wakes up. And then I can have a few hours with my husband without thinking about what I have to do. So in a similar manner, structure your day in a way that you prioritize God and make time to pray. Now, what does this prayer look like? Don't let the mechanics of prayer hinder you from simply entering in. It isn't necessarily quantity as much as it is quality. I use a journal to write down my thoughts as I am seeking God and reading His Word, and that has really been helpful to me to see what I'm thinking. And this is one means of prayer. I talk to God in my head throughout the day. I pray with my husband at nighttime, and whenever the Holy Spirit provokes me to prayer. So it doesn't have to look like one time during our day, and there really aren't rules other than just come as you are and seek Him. That is what prayer is. We are seeking Him. So make time to relate to God. And finally, number 4, we struggle to relate to a God we cannot see. Back to that earlier analogy and statement that I made, we can feel a little foolish talking out loud when no one else is around. Relating to God is different than relating to other people. But it's also very much the same. Give God your heart. Be honest with Him. Relating to God is in the spirit, not the flesh. So while we don't get a physical hug from God, his spirit encourages us. I will often weep over the goodness of God as his word is revealed to me, and then I understand it and marvel at his goodness. I think we can see God when we look for God in our lives. Do you see him and how he provides and cares for you? Do you see him by placing evidence of him all around you? It might be scriptures on the walls, or it might be worship music that you listen to that draws you nearer to him. It might be looking for sightings of him throughout your day, evidence of him working in your life or someone else's life. Pause and be aware of his presence. God is spirit, and we relate to him in the spirit. God promises to answer us and reveal things to us. Jeremiah 33 verse 3 says, "Call to me and I will answer you and will tell you great and hidden things that you have not known." There is no other relationship that can do that for us. Next week, we're going to talk about how to relate to God through worship as we continue this series. And then the week after that, I want to dive in and show you how to relate to God through his precious word. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to study God's word and apply it to your life. So I look forward to continuing this series with you. And I just want to say one tidbit here for you young moms who have children and so many incessant demands on you. God sees you. Your time with God isn't going to look like anyone else's. I think it was John Wesley's mom, Susanna Wesley, who pulled an apron over her head to pray. And for me, when my children were small, I would just drop to my knees in front of them and talk to God. There is no one right, perfect way. Just come as you are and pray. You guys go with God, and we'll see you next week.